Hello and welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. My name is Alfonso Peluso, and I'm an associate teaching professor in the College of Architecture at IIT, the home of the legendary Mies van der Rohe, and I'm adjunct faculty at Columbia College Chicago in the Interior Architecture program. Shout out to all my students. I hope you're having a great day. It is a early fall day. We have some nice weather. We are a few weeks into the fall semester of 2023, so everything is going really well. I hope the weather is great where you're at and things are going well for you too. Today we're going to look at Rhino cam flip milling, and we're going to flip mill all four sides of this piece of stock. We're going to be thinking about using foam to mill this wonderful piece out of. So if you don't have a robot arm that has, 6-axis capability, you can use this tutorial to flip mill and get all around. Is it 12 axis? Maybe it is 12 axis. All right. Before we jump into the tutorial, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, what are you waiting for? Let's get into it. All right. Go ahead and search me up on YouTube. My first name Alfonso, my last name Peluso. Click on subscribe and click on the bell to receive all the notifications. If you're into digital design, there is something here for you. And I have a lot of great videos coming your way. Also, connect with me on Instagram at my first name, Alfonso, _ my last name, Peluso. I've been doing a lot of AI images recently, and I'm excited to be part of Mobile Detroit 2050 at the Detroit Design Week. I have some of my AI images featured in that. Okay, so my inspiration for today was a 3D print I made last spring of a live soap surface that I made in grasshopper and kangaroo. So that's the surface that we're going to look at milling out minus the triangles. All right, let's jump into it. Okay, so here you see the finished product. We're going to start out just in Rhino making this awesome flip mill. So I'm going to go ahead for right now and close Rhino Cam and kind of just get us from the beginning, just kind of having this surface here, which is actually a mesh object, which is fine. You can have meshes or surfaces. So if I make this shaded, we can see what we have, and it has some thickness to it, which you want to have. The thickness on this, let's take a look at it. I'll just use my distance command. And let's try that again. Distance. And let's see, vertex to vertex. 0.4 inches. Okay, so a little less than a half of an inch thick. So you want to definitely have some thickness so this thing just doesn't disintegrate and fall apart, because you could make this out of wood. We're looking at making it out of foam today. All right. So let's go. I'm going to save this as a different file. I don't think I've made a folder for flip milling yet. Let's do it now. All right. All right, so the first thing is we have to get this situated in our stock. The stock has to be larger than the object. If I take this image, I'm just going to make the default layer current. If I take this, not image, but this mesh. If I take this mesh and I type in bounding box, and I enter through a few of these commands, here's our bounding box. So that's the extents of that object. So that's important to have. So I'm going to just take some distances. So here's a distance in this direction. It's 3 inches. Here's a distance in this direction. It's 3 inches. So it's 3 by 3 in that direction, and the X and in the Y. or the X and the Z, I should say. The X and the Z is 3 inches. In the Y direction, it's 9 inches. So I can put that on a stock that's 4 by 4 by 12. So I'm going to go ahead and make that box that's 4 by 4 by 12. I'm going to make it at the origin, so at 0, 0, 0. And the base or length, I'm going to put in 4 inches. See if I get this in the right order. And yeah, this length, I'm going to put in my 12 inches. And then the height, I'm going to put in my 4 inches. All right, so there we have that's our box. That's our stock box. So I just have to take this bounding box and the mesh inside of it and center it in this bounding box. So I'm sure there's a lot of ways you can do it. The way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to change my viewport to wireframe, and I'm going to draw a couple lines, one from there to there. And I'm going to do a similar thing on my mesh from there to there. All right, let's see if I can get the midpoint to midpoint, even with all that mesh triangulation going. So let's try it out. So I'm going to take this, type in move, and instead of trying to snap to the midpoint of that line, I'm going to type in mid, M-I-D, in Rhino, enter, and then I'm going to find the midpoint of that line. And I'm going to go to the midpoint of the other line. I could type in MID again, enter, and find the midpoint. All right, so there we have it, centered, floating in that big bounding box. So for now, I can hide all of the geometry except for the mesh. So I'm not going to delete it because I'm going to want it to come back to it. So I'm going to hide this and hide this by selecting it and typing in hide. Okay. All right, so we're going to start. We have it centered now, so now we'll start to set up the milling processes. All right, awesome. So I'm working in RhinoCam 2022 right now. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to choose mill. All right, so it's got all my processes from before. So I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of all that. I'm going to right click and let's see if it lets me do it all at once. I love this one. Delete all dirty mops. Wow, I haven't seen that before. That is so funny. I'm going to delete all. Delete all dirty mops. I love that. All right. All right. All right. All right. So machine 3-axis. The post. We're using ShopSaber WinCNC. WinCNC is the name of the software. ATC stands for Automatic Tool Change. That's what we're using in the College of Architecture, IIT's shop. So, yeah, the College of Architecture at IIT, that's our ShopSaber CNC machine. So we have to make sure our post-processing language can be read by the ShopSaber CNC machine. All right, the stock. I'm going to double click on stock and look at that. I love when that happens. I have that object hidden and it found it. So that's amazing. So 4 by 12 by 4, that's the size of our stock, and then 0, 0, 0. Now, I'm working a little bit differently than I normally work. If you see my other CNC tutorials, you'll know that I usually make the top of my stock at 0, 0, 0, and this would be down below. This would be down below. So let's just take a look at that. Let's talk about that. So let's see if I can do this. Move this vertically. Let's see, it's 4 inches what I want. Nope, negative 4 inches. So move this from a point, vertical equal yes. From a point, negative 4 inches. Okay, this is how I normally work. So let's see if it, let me unhide everything. All right, this is worth looking at, I promise. Okay, if I'm going to take this extrusion and move it down 4 inches. Let's try that again. Move, vertical equal yes, point to move from, -4 inches. All right. I'm going to hide all this. I'm curious what I'm going to get with all this geometry here. Okay, let's see what we find here. Stock. So I'm just going to make my Z -4. Let's see what we get here. Okay, it did work. Just didn't want to update it. All right, perfect. All right, all that just to show you that this is how I normally work. I normally work with the top of my stock at 0, 0, 0. So that's so that I can just go to the top of my stock when I'm setting it up on the CNC and I make that Z0. Well, I can still do that if I change my work 0. Okay, if I make the top of my stock work 0, if I make that Z height 0, then I'm all good to go, and we're going to take an in-depth look at that. Okay, so this is how I normally work. Let's see how I'm working today. So let's do some undos. All right, let's check our stock. It's sitting down there at -4. I want that to be at 0, so 0, 0, 0, 4, 12, 4. Click OK. Let's get that back up there. All right. There's a little button in the lower left right there. So that can show the stock. That was set to off, so I wasn't seeing the stock. We'll work with that today. We'll turn it, we'll toggle it on and off, but a good thing to know that. All right, so there's my stock. And it's 4x4x12 at 0, 0, 0. So what I'm going to set up is my work 0. Right now, my work 0 is down at the bottom of my stock. I want that to be the top of my stock. So I'm going to go to machining operations, and I'm going to choose work 0. We're going to work a lot with this work 0. So I'm going to put that at 0, 0, 4. So top of my stock, and hit generate. All right, so now you see that. There's my work 0. That's the important one. My work 0 should always match the 0, 0, 0 of my part at the CNC machine. So top of my stock at the CNC machine. Lower left-hand corner, top of my stock. So we'll keep that in mind. Lower left-hand corner, top of my stock. All right, so there's my work 0. So let's set up some milling operations. So I'm going to go to milling operations, 3-axis advanced, and we're going to look at horizontal roughing. This is a quick way to take large amounts of materials away very quickly. So it's going to spiral down. That's the pattern of the horizontal roughing. It starts from the top and spirals its way down, and we'll see that working. So horizontal roughing. All right. We'll set up some regions. That's going to be important. We'll do that in a little bit. But let's look at the tool. So just so you know, it automatically finds the surface. So you got to make sure you have all your surfaces or meshes hidden, except the surface or mesh that you're going to mill. So let's go to tool, and we're going to use a ball mill 3/8. So that's already been made, but just to go through that. So edit, create, select tool. I've set that as ball mill 3/8. I've set the tool diameter to 0.375, which is 3/8. The shank diameter to 0.375, which is 3/8. Okay, the tool length, I'm leaving that at 4 inches. And that's pretty much the length of the end mill that I'm going to use is 4 inches. Just need to make sure that my shoulder length and my flute length are smaller than my overall tool length. All right, let's go to feeds and speeds. So feeds and speeds, I'm setting this per my tool. Okay, so that's already been set up per my tool. So the speed is 16,000 RPM. And I'm going with some more precise numbers than I've gone with in the past. Okay, so I'm setting something specifically for my plunge, approach, engage, my cut, retract, and departure. And I'm setting these numbers up for foam at the CNC that we're using at the College of Architecture at IIT. So you want to check your CNC settings where you're working that are best for foam. So plunge, we're going to plunge in at 100. We're going to approach at 230, and we're going to engage at 360. And then we're going to cut at 500 inches per minute. So we're moving pretty fast, 500 inches per minute. And then we're going to retract and depart away from this at 1,000 inches per minute. All right, so those are our feeds. Those are our feeds and speeds. And I'm going to click on Save Edits the Tool. I didn't really do anything, but I'm going to click Exit. So that's my tool. So I go over to Feeds and Speeds, and I want to make sure Load from Tool is checked on. Otherwise, it will not get the speeds and feeds from the tool. So Load from Tool, I want to click that. All right, Clearance Plane. So we're going to use stock max plus Z distance for our clearance plane. And we're going to use skim for our cut transfer method. So we're going to skim, we'll see that. We're going to skim really close to the surface. So we're going to save ourselves some time because it's not going up and down to the clearance plane when it's actually milling. It's not going up and down a 1/4 inch away from the object. Okay, let's go on up to the upper left and let's go to cut parameters. That sends it down to the bottom. All right, cut parameters. All right, so let's look at our step over distance here. So we're going to actually use a distance for the step over, which is 50% of our tool diameter. So instead of putting 50% in here, I'm going to put in distance, and then I'm going to set this to 50% of my tool diameter. So 3/8 is my tool diameter, so 3/16 is 50% of it. So 3/16 is 0.1875. Okay, and I like to put in the distance just in case I set the diameter of the end mill incorrectly. This will still work for me for my step over because it's in the distance. All right, anything else I want to do here? Just to note that it's leaving some stock material, 0.025. So when you horizontal rough, it leaves some material so that when you come in with your finish process or your finish path, it has some material to take away. So it's leaving 0.025 of stock material. All right, cut levels. Okay, cut levels. So again, we're going to step down 50% of the tool diameter. So we're going to step down that same distance, 0.1875, which is 3/16. Okay. And now we're going to go to cut levels. This is an important one. So top is going to be 0. So you see that highlight in green. That's the top. That's the top of stock. Now I'm going to go right down to the middle of my stock. So my stock is 4 inches. I'm going to go right down to the middle of that at -2. So I'm going to check on bottom, and I'm going to put in -2. Let's see that update. Okay, so now you see that. So for each one of my flips, starting with the main one, I'm going down to the center, okay, the centroid of this stock. All right, engage and retract, I'm going to leave. Advanced cut parameters, I'm going to leave that. And let's go ahead and generate this. All right, wow, look at that. So it's milling, we're going to talk about this. It's milling the entire stock, which is something that I don't want. So if I go ahead and right click and simulate this, okay, I got it going super fast. I can take away the toolpath visibility, okay? So that's this little button down here, and I can actually see it doing the milling. All right, this isn't going to work for me because when I go to flip this, say I'm going to flip it 180 degrees, I have nothing for this stock to sit flat on. If I go ahead and rotate it 180, so I'm going to rotate it down like that. Imagine it's sitting on the CNC machine. There's nowhere for it to sit. It's lost some of the stock that I need to be flat, and we'll see that a little more clearly in a second. So I'm going to have to set up a region or regions for my milling. All right, so here's my little toolpath button just so I'm going to click keep it on, okay? All right, so a region to mill. So I'm going to type in show, get all my geometry back. I'm going to go to program. Okay, so I'm going to set up some regions, and I believe I have some set up already. Well, I might have deleted them, which is good. I just want to remake them. Okay, I don't see them here. All right, so I'm going to set up regions. So I have a layer called regions. I'm going to make that current. And my first region, I'm going to make a rectangle. And that's going to be of that inside box. I don't want to call it stock because it's not stock. It's the inside bounding box of the mesh. So I'm putting the curve on the inside bounding box of the mesh. I'm putting it on the top right now. I'm going to need one for every side, but let's just start with that. Okay, so let's hide the box. I have two of these here. I don't need two of them. I'll get rid of one. Okay, let's hide this stuff. Let's hide that. Poly surface. I think I have two of those there. We only need one. Okay, let's get rid of that diagonal line. Just hide that. Okay, so I have just the mesh and the region, the area that I want to mill in. Okay, so it's a 2D rectangle. So that's the 2D area that I want to mill in. And then the Z is set by my cut levels that we set at 0 and -2. So let's go ahead and double click in the horizontal roughing and let's select curve edge regions. Let's pick this top one, enter. And let's click generate. Okay, so now you see that the milling is contained in that region. And if I go ahead and right click that and choose simulate, you can see that I can uncheck my one pretty fast. Let's do it again. Let's slow this down. All right, slow it down. So you see that milling. Here's the toolpath gone. All right. So that is pretty awesome, just kind of normal 3-axis milling. Now I've left my stock material, enough of that stock material that was at 0, 0, 0, so that when I flip this upside down, it can sit flat on the CNC. All right, so we're going to keep on going. So that's horizontal roughing. I want to smooth this out and get better resolution on the milling, and I'm going to do that with a parallel finishing process. So I'm going to I did a rough pass, now I'm going to do a finish pass. So I'm going to go back to program. I'm going to go to machining operations, 3-axis advance, and I'm going to choose parallel finishing. Okay, it remembers the drive region from before, so that's great. Tool, same tool, ball mill 3/8. I'm going to use that for both processes. Feeds and speeds, all right, that's all there. I don't have to load from tool. Clearance plane, stock max plus Z, and skim, so it remembers that. So skim. We'll see in the simulation if we can actually get it to see the skim at slow motion. All right, so I'm going to go in the upper left, click on cut parameters. That brings that down. Notice stock is set to 0. Okay, so it's going all the way down to my mesh object. It's leaving no stock left. All right, my step over control. So I'm going to go ahead and do this at a distance because just in case I set my M-mill diameter improperly, I'm going to do this at a distance of 0.125, an eighth of an inch. So not super high resolution, but fairly decent. All right, let's go to Z containment. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to specify the highest Z, which is going to be 0. And we're going to specify the lowest Z, which is going to be -2. Let's see if we can get that to show up there. Probably not until I click out of it, right? Let's go to entry exit. Let's go back to Z containment. There you go. So I clicked in and out of it. So you just want to check that. 0, 0, and -2. And we're not putting any step down cuts. So it's going to go right down to the mesh object, the mesh surface, and we'll see that in a little bit. All right, entry, exit, leave that. Advanced cut parameters, we'll leave that. Sorting, we're going to leave that. We're going to click generate. Let's click on our toolpath visibility. There it is. So we see that. And let's go ahead and simulate the parallel finishing. Okay, so you see that going across. So it's skimming. You can see that it's skimming as it's going left to right. I can slow that down even more. All right, there we go, slow motion. So as it moves from one parallel line to a next parallel line, it is just skimming the surface. It's not raising itself up to stock max plus Z. So we're getting a nice skim cut there. All right, let's speed it up a little bit. It's almost done. All right, so let's turn off our tool path. All right, so that's one side. We're going to do 4 sides. The good news is we can do some copy pasting, and we're going to just change our work zero. So all the hard work is really done. Now it's really getting a grasp of this work zero and just, get your feet wet with that and be the master of the work zero. So let's do that. All right, so I think the way to do this is to first move the work zero, then rotate it. All right, we're going to do the right side. We're going to do the right side. So setup 1, let's right click and rename it. I'm going to call this setup top. Okay, so that's going to be my setup top. Okay. All right, setup top. Let's right click and choose copy. Nothing selected to copy. All right, so let's select it. I have it selected. Let's right click, choose copy. Let's see if this works. Right click, choose paste. Nothing to paste. All right, we'll try it. 3rd time's a charm. How about that? So I've got it selected. There, now it's selected. Right click, copy, right click, paste. All right, there we go. We got it. So you got to make sure it's selected, highlighted in blue, just like that. So I'm going to select this one, setup 2. I'm going to right click. I'm going to rename it. This is going to be setup right side. Okay, setup right side. So my work zero, right now if I click on work zero, it's right here. It's in the upper left. So I'm going to be flipping this 90 degrees on the y-axis, 90 degrees on the y-axis. So this corner right here is going to end up replacing this corner. When I turn this to the left, counterclockwise, to the left on the y-axis, counterclockwise, this corner is going to shift over to that corner. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move my work zero. I'm double clicking on work zero, and in the x-axis I'm going to put in 4, and I'm going to click generate. Okay, so there's my work zero. Okay, so that's perfect. Now I need to rotate that so that Z is going to be in the positive direction. So this is, you got to get your head around this a little bit. Just got to kind of turn your head. So Z is going to replace where my red x-axis is. So Z is going to go there. So I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees about the y-axis. All right, so I have to, rotating that, I can't do that under my work zero. I can't rotate it there, but I can rotate it under my setup. If I double click on my setup, I'm going to put in 90 for the spin angle, and then I'm going to rotate that along the y-axis 90 degrees. So I'm going to click on that one time, and I'm going to click on generate, and let's click on work zero and see that. There we go. That blue axis is pointing outward. So when this rotates 90 degrees to the left counterclockwise, Z will be pointed up. Okay, so that's the way you got to think of that. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this a little more closely. So my horizontal roughing and my parallel finishing, I'm getting the big explosion there, the explosion symbol. So I'm going to set up my region. Okay, I'm going to just go ahead and set that up right now. So I'm going to type in show, and I'm going to type in rectangle, and I'm just going to go ahead and make that region. So I got to make, when I make this rectangle, I have to say vertical, and I'm going to go ahead and make that start of edge, end of edge, vertical. Okay, there's that one. So I'm also going to need one on the other side. So let's just make it. Let's just make all these right now. Make all these right now. Start, end. A little tough to see in there. And all right. I think that's all I need. Oh, I'll need one for the bottom too. So let me go ahead and make that one rectangle. That's just a regular rectangle. Okay, now I'll hide this poly surface, and I'll hide this other outer one. Okay, so no other 3D geometry but the mesh. Let's turn off my stock for the moment. Okay, let's get back to where we can see things. Let's hide those diagonal lines. Hide this one. Okay, so I have a bunch of regions. That's the red objects. Those are regions. Okay, they're not 3D objects, so I can only have one 3D. I only have the 3D object that I'm milling. All right, so horizontal roughing. I'm going to go in and remove all the drive regions and then select curve edge regions. So this is the side one. Press enter and click on generate. Okay, turn my stock on, turn my toolpath visibility on. Okay, and let's go ahead and simulate that. So there you go. Look at that, that's awesome. So it's like if this was the top, oh, I don't want to confuse you guys, but I want to so bad want to angle that the right way. It's hard to flip around in, there we go. Flip around in Rhino, it's hard. Okay, so you see lower left-hand corner is where the work zero is. Z is pointing up. That's if I flipped it. All right, so hopefully you're starting to get your head wrapped around that. So, you'll know it's milling from the side. It's milling from the right side. So let's go ahead and let that mill really quickly. All right, we'll take a look at it. Turn off the toolpath visibility so you see that roughed out with the horizontal roughing. I don't like that. I don't like that the least bit. So I need to figure out what's happening with that little piece right there. All right, so that's something that we shouldn't be seeing in our preview. And we didn't see it in the top. All right, so horizontal roughing. Let's see, engage and retract. I don't know. I have to think about that one. Let's look at our cut levels. So 0 to -2. See those two planes there? All right, so we'll figure it out. All right, let's do our parallel finishing. So same thing. I'm going to remove all, and I'm going to select curve edge regions, and I'm going to pick the outer one. Enter. Generate that. And let's go ahead and simulate this whole thing. All right, so I'm not sure if that's actually going to do that little crossover that we saw, but we'll keep an eye on it. All right, so now I'm going to mill the left side. So this is getting easier and easier as we go because I have the setup right side. I'm going to select it, right click, copy, then right click in the white space and choose paste and just rename setup 3. And this is going to be called setup left side. Okay, and I click on the little plus and it shows the work zero, the horizontal roughing, and the parallel finishing. All right, so for this one, we're going to mill the left side of the box. So this time, we're going to rotate clockwise. 90 degrees still on the y-axis, but clockwise. So let's move. Well, we don't need to move the work zero because when I move this clockwise, when I rotate this clockwise, not move it clockwise, but when I rotate this clockwise, this lower left-hand corner is going to become the upper left-hand corner. Okay, so that's working. It's in the right place. Let's just rotate it so that Z is to the left, so that when this rotates, Z will be up. So we got to rotate about the y-axis 90 degrees. So let's double-click on our setup, And we have this spin angle. I'm going to set this to -90, and I'm going to rotate that on the y-axis. And let's click generate and see if we get that correctly. All right, so I think it's remembering the right side, starting from the right side. So I think I got to rotate it just another 90 degrees because it wasn't from the world XY. It was from the last setup that we made, the setup right side. So let's go ahead and click on that. And let's do the y-axis one more time. I wanted that to be -90. So -90, y-axis, and then -90 one more time, the y-axis. Okay, there we go. Now we see that pointing to the left there. So that's what we want. Okay, so when that rotates to the right clockwise, that z-axis is going to be pointing up. All right, let's see our horizontal roughing. Let's go in here and remove all, select curve edge regions. Let's pick that outer one. Enter. Let's generate it. Let's simulate it and see what that looks like. Oh man, definitely not what we want. So am I excited that this is happening? Not really, but I get to show you guys what's going on with this. So let's figure it out together. What is happening with that? All right, horizontal roughing. Let's stop our simulation. Let's double click on horizontal roughing. Let's select the drive region. That looks right. Remove all. Select curve edge regions. It's this outer one. Maybe I selected the wrong curve. Got to make sure it's the side one. I'm pretty sure I did. Enter. Let's generate that. Let's look at the tool visibility, toolpath visibility. So that's definitely not right. Okay, so the position, something's wrong with the work zero. Let's take a look at it. Let's get this figured out. It looks like the work arrow is over here. The work zero is over there when it should be all the way to the left. So let's look at the position of that. Okay, we know what the direction is fine. Let's click on work zero. Okay, there we go. We click on work zero. It is in the upper right. We don't want that. Okay, that needs to be down here in the lower left-hand corner. So it needs to be at 0, 0, 0. So let's look at that work zero location. Right now it is at 4, 0, -4. So 0 and 0. So I'm kind of glad it happens just so you guys can see this if it happens to you, what to be conscious of. So I didn't use my rule of moving the work zero first and then rotating it. So let's click on generate. All right, so now it's in the right location. Let's double click on horizontal roughing, generate that. Okay, now that looks right for the tool path. So let's go ahead and simulate it. Turn off the toolpath visibility. All right, it's looking good. Yeah, I am seeing that going across it. I'm not loving that. Let's go ahead and do the parallel finishing. Let's remove all. Let's select curve edge regions. Is that the right side? Yeah, that's the right side. Enter. Generate that. Let's go ahead and simulate it. Okay. So that's looking good. We now have the hole. We have our first hole through it. So when we flip the bottom, when we do the bottom, we're going to get a hole right down the middle here. All right. Last one, setup bottom. So let's take this setup left side. Let's right click on it, copy. Let's right click in the white space, paste. Click on the little plus to see all the machine operations. Click on setup 4, right click, rename it, and call this setup bottom. Setup bottom. Okay, so now it's a matter of our work zero. So let's try to use our our rule of moving it first. Let's click on the work 0 so we can see it. There, now we see it. Okay. So I wasn't doing that before. We can click on these and we can see each different work 0. Okay. So that bottom one is sitting at the lower left-hand corner. So I'm going to move it. All right, so where am I going to move it to? So I'm going to rotate this cube 180 degrees. So this corner in the lower right, if I rotate that 180 degrees, that's going to put it to the top. All right, so let's move it there first. That's when I rotate this 180 degrees, this lower right-hand corner is going to replace this upper left-hand corner. So let's move it. We're going to move it to 4 in the X. Yeah, 4 in the X. Let's move it. All right, so I'm going to click on Setup. Actually, I'm going to click on Work 0. This is for rotating it. So double click on Work 0, and my X is going to be 4. Okay, let's generate that. Okay. All right, so I don't like moving this right now just because of the XYZ is all fuddled up. All right, so let's do this one a different way. So let's set up the work 0 at 0, 0, 0. And let's see if we can get the rotation of it back to normal. There is a set orientation parallel to, so I can go world X, world Y, and world Z. So that's helpful for you guys to see. Just resets everything. Gets it just back to where it was from the beginning. All right, so there it is. The XYZ is all orientated to world. X is to the right, Y is going up, and Z is up in 3D space. All right, so now I'm going to move it to this right-hand corner. So that's a positive 4 in the X. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Setup. Nope, that's for rotating. Click on Work 0 and put in X for the 4. Okay, there it is. Now I'm going to rotate this about the Y-axis 180 degrees so that Z is pointing down. I rotate my stock counterclockwise or clockwise, doesn't really matter in this case because I'm rotating it 180 degrees. So I'm going to double click on Setup, and I'm going to put in 180, and I'm going to click on the Y-axis, and I'm going to click Generate. And let's click on the work 0. So there it is. The work 0 is in the lower right. Z is pointing down, but when I rotate my stock 180 degrees, Z will be pointing up. I know it's going to take a while to get your head wrapped around this. It takes me a while too, and I've done this for many, many years. All right, let's finish this up. So horizontal roughing, let's do that. Let's remove all. Let's select curve edge regions, and we'll select the bottom one. There's the bottom one. Enter. And let's generate that. And let's simulate it. There it goes. All right, keeps wanting to make that diagonal line, and as long as it's not all the way down to the stock, and it's not because we're leaving 0.025 on the stock, and the parallel finishing is actually taking care of that. So let's go to our parallel finishing. Let's remove all. Let's select curve edge regions. I have it flipped upside down right now, so that's the top. Generate that. We'll simulate it. Okay, so that takes out that little diagonal line. All right, let's go back to our world. Okay, here's our world. World XYZ right here. All right, so that's flip milling 4 sides. That is awesome. And I just want to point out a few things. Okay, so this object that I've milled right now, it's set up in a way that it leaves these little tabs so that this mesh piece doesn't fall out. It doesn't just drop out of the box here. So you might have to put in your own boxes, just make a box in Rhino as tabs to hold this in so it doesn't fall out. If you've done the 2D processing like profiling, if you've done profiling, you can add bridges or tabs to keep it in place. You want to think of the same thing in 3D. This shape just happens to have its own. You can make boxes to keep that in place so it doesn't fall out. The other thing that you want to make sure of is you have to export each one of these now as its own NC code. So you have to right click and export the setup top. So you have to post it. You have to post. I can't post on this because I'm running the demo. So you have to post setup top separately. It'll be called setup top something, and then you have to post setup right, and then you have to post setup left, and then you have to post setup bottom, because you can't run it all because you have to you have to flip your stock in between each one of these setups. You're going to flip the stock. So you got to have them all as their own separate NC files. So you want to export all 4 of these. So naming them is really important, and then keeping track of them and having the right file to open. So you got to just be a little bit more conscious when you're at the CNC machine to which setup you have open and what you're milling. All right, I'm just trying to think if I missed anything, if there's anything else that I want to show you. I think that's everything for this flip milling. Awesome, excited to see what my students can do with this. All right, if you like this video, just like it and leave me a comment. Why did you like it? My head's going to pop up in the upper left. You can click on that if you haven't subscribed. I'm going to put some other Rhino Cam videos in the upper right and the lower right. All right, have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one.